So I know that as you heard from that intro, you are chomping at the bit and can't wait to hear what we're about to talk about. But I am just over the moon to talk with Holly today because Holly is coming from one of the most badass backgrounds into what I think is the most badass, working with health and wellness. And we're going to uncover some things today that maybe are going to be just what you need. This is something that's near and dear to my heart. This is something that women and men too struggle with. But since my listeners are women, I know that this is going to be very fruitful for you today. And I am really excited to talk with Holly Bertone. She is here today to give us so much wisdom and so much guidance. And at the end, she has a gift. So stick around and welcome Holly to the Badass Reset Club.
Oh my goodness, Heather, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here. Just you're a fellow Hashi sister and triathlete and just have so many similar core values with supporting women. So thank you so much for having me on the show.
Oh gosh, it's my pleasure to have you here. And the reason that we're bringing Holly in today is because on the Badass Reset Club, we are constantly hitting the reset somewhere in our lives, whether it's with our fitness, whether it's with our nutrition, our hormones, our mindset. We always need to come back, hit a reset, and move forward stronger, more confident, with grace, with ease. And so you are going to be so helpful today, hitting the reset as we come into this discussion about emotional eating. But before we get there, I know my listeners are dying to know more. Please tell us, how does one go from working with the FBI to working in nutrition and with, health coaching? How does this happen? Did you wake up one morning and say, that's it, it's over, I'm changing? Or was this?
You froze for a second. Are you back?
I'm back. Oh, yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Sorry.
So let's jump into the story. But before we do that, I really just want to say, Heather, again, just how much I admire your podcast. And like I said, your dedication to just working with other women and supporting other women. And for everyone listening, I want you to do me a huge favor as a guest. I want you to go to Apple, go to Spotify, leave a 5-star review and rating for Heather, because that's going to help her get this podcast out to so many more people. I left a review, I left a rating, and it would really mean a lot to me if your listeners did that. So
Oh, that's so kind. Thank you, Holly. Okay,
yeah.
tell us about you.
Yeah. So, and I want your listeners to kind of think about it from this perspective, because, and especially in midlife, especially at this time of our life, we're at that place where, you may have said to yourself, like, I've risen to the top of my career. I'm smart, successful. I'm crushing it with my family. I'm a pillar of the community. I'm doing all of these things because of the habits and the discipline, but these same strategies don't work when it comes to losing weight. And more specifically, it's this underlying current of this constant uncontrollable food noise and the cravings and the mindless snacking. And I'm coming at this from the perspective of being an emotional eater of over 40 years. That is my background. I was, it didn't matter. I was 150 pounds. I was 40 pounds overweight at one point. I was 110 pounds. And I know I don't know if you still do triathletes. I'm a former triathlete, 110 pounds, quote unquote, healthy and, thin and fit. And it didn't matter because I ate my emotions on a daily basis. And when I was at the FBI, and this is exactly what it would look like every single day, I would take a family size bag of peanut M&Ms. And I chose the peanut ones because protein. Yeah. And I would dump them out on my desk. I'd mix them up. I'd sort them by color. And then I would speed eat them with my left hand. And then I would crank out the PowerPoint deck with my right hand. And I wasn't an agent, I was in a management role. So, so I mean, PowerPoint decks, like that's what we did. But it's just this fast paced, constant stress of the work environment, and especially, with the stuff that we dealt with. And as that stress increased, the speed eating increased. And fast forward, and I'll share where everything just kind of came crashing down. And I had already resigned from the FBI. So I had already become a health coach. I'd already resigned from the FBI. And every Thursday, I would start just having this constant thought about Friday afternoon because Friday, the weekends were my treat. I was a health coach. I was super disciplined all week long.
Mhm.
And I was like, I'm going to treat myself for the weekend. I worked hard, I ate healthy. And your listeners may have been like, okay, yeah, I've been pulled in all these different directions. And that comfort food is just that one place of quiet. It's this that one place where it just takes the edge off. And that was what it was for me. It just took the edge off. And I love it was a salted caramel ice cream. I'm a Pennsylvania girl and I love the salted caramel. So in my head, I did that whole everything in moderation thing. And I can't actually believe I'm going to admit this, but I did that everything in moderation thing. So I'm like, okay, here's the game plan. I'm going to do a third of the pint on Friday, a third of the pint on Saturday, a third of the pint on Sunday. And that made sense because
Mhm.
it's what we've been taught, the moderation thing. Well, what would happen was I would put my spoon in the container and, I'd savor the first bite, savor the second bite, the mindful eating. And then the next thing I knew, the ice cream is gone, completely gone. My spoon was scraping the bottom of the container. So that was Friday. And then I'd get into the freezer on Saturday, have another pint, get into the freezer on Sunday and have another pint. So it was every single weekend. It was 3 pints of ice cream, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And from that place of justifying it, again, I worked hard, I'm at a healthy
Mhm.
weight, I deserve a treat. But there was one Sunday, and I'm finishing up that third pint of ice cream on Sunday afternoon. And it was so bad because I don't even remember eating it. Like, I don't even remember tasting it. All I remember is the next thing I know, my spoon wasn't just scraping the bottom of the container. It was in that groove at the bottom of the container, trying to get out that last bit of chocolate. Like that, I didn't want it to end.
Mhm.
And that's how bad it was. And I'm staring at the bottom of this container. I'm like, Holly Bertone, what are you doing? Like, you should be better than this. Why can't you just eat like a normal person? Why can't you just have a few bites and put it back in the freezer? And I felt this because the logical part of our brain, it justifies it, to make it okay. But I felt this shame
Mhm.
because as a health coach, I should be better. I
Mhm.
should be leading better. I should know better. And it was from that perspective of, I'm putting on these appearances to the outside world that I've got it all together. But inside, behind closed doors, it was just a hot mess express. And I went upstairs and I did a 360 in my closet and I was looking at all my clothes. And it really hit me because a lot of these clothes I wasn't wearing anymore
Mm.
because they fit, but just barely. They were just a little bit too tight, just a little bit too uncomfortable. And I was thinking back to when I was 40 pounds overweight and how much I hated how fat I looked.
Mm.
And I remember thinking back to when I had breast cancer, when I had, dealing with the autoimmune disease and the Hashimoto's and what those diseases did to my body and how much I hated my body between the weight gain and the loss and all the things and the puffiness. And I was like, you know what? I am never going to go back to that place again. And I made a decision. I was like, I made a vow to myself that something absolutely has to change. And that was a hard truth because, it doesn't matter how much you weigh or how healthy you eat most of the time. Because if you're struggling with the emotional eating, that food noise is always going to win.
Mhm.
And that's when I realized I'm like, you know what? It's not just me. All of the clients who I was coaching, they're dealing with this too. They're battling this demanding lifestyle at midlife that just somehow explodes. And then, the food noise and then the shame on top of it.
Mhm.
So I became a little obsessed. Like I put the FBI hat back on and I was like, okay, I am gonna go to work. And I wanted to uncover what the diet and the weight loss industry doesn't want us to know is that it's not always about the food and the cardio and the weight and the
Mhm.
calories. We actually have to address those root cause triggers and those automatic eating patterns. And it's those are what's driving our behaviors. Those patterns are what control everything.
Mhm.
And in order for things to change, we actually have to go back and rewire those patterns. And when I started to realize that, when I uncovered that, that's when everything changed for me. And that's when everything changed for the women who I coach as well. And that's when I decided this is my sweet spot to really just focus on that emotional eating perspective. And, I mean, I've got the pieces of paper on the wall that say I'm certified to coach, but the way that I coach and even everything that I'm going to share today, it's really built on all of those food monsters that I've overcome personally
Mhm.
and the skills from FBI counterintelligence, the analyzing the patterns and countering the threats. And then I combine that with the brain science of neuroplasticity. And that's when we strike gold.
Beautiful. I am all about that. And I just want to say thank you for sharing the vulnerable parts of that. I know that's not easy to do, but it's necessary. And I also don't know if I've ever met a person who doesn't have some sort of constant food noise.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, I know for myself, as being someone who's really active, I'm thinking about lunch when I'm eating breakfast. I'm constantly thinking about food.
Yeah.
And I chalk it up to because that's in our wheelhouse. It's what we're doing for, a career. We're working with, the nutrition piece of it. So it's in the forefront of my brain. But I also know that just like so many other people, there's a constant chatter there.
Yeah.
For me, it's sugar.
Yeah.
It's, like,
Yeah, I was gonna say I've heard you share publicly. You kind of have a sweet tooth,
oh, I absolutely have a sweet tooth.
and I'm right there with you.
And it's to the point that I can, like I'll be vulnerable here. I'll be the one if my husband and I are talking about, oh, we need to go grab these things at the store. I'll be the one to say, I'll go because maybe I'm gonna grab just a little something sweet too to have.
Yeah,
And it's I know for me it's a chemical response as well,
yeah,
that sugar dopamine hit and I want more. But I completely understand where you're coming from, and I think our listeners do too.
yeah. And for me personally, what it looks like on the other side of that, going back to the ice cream, and that sweet tooth, like I mean, it was obsessive, and I mean now, so I personally, and I'm not saying anyone has to do this. This is just a personal decision. I've actually been off sugar for a year.
Ooh,
And
good for
so, yeah,
you.
so that's been great for me personally. I'm not saying everyone has their own choices. That's my choice. But here's what's interesting is because I do share a lot of content on Instagram on the reels,
Mhm.
and a lot of times I'll have a tub of ice cream. And I've even taken a few bites because of, just for the filming the content,
Mhm.
and it does absolutely nothing. I can
Wow.
actually have a bite and, you know, put it right back in the freezer. So, from a
Impressive.
from a start to finish, like that's what this can look like on
Mm.
the other side. And
Mhm.
and yeah, I mean, I still, even to this day, even without sugar, I still get those cravings. It's just learning to control it from a different perspective.
Mhm. Yeah. I've done the no sugar for a while, and once you are off it for, even 3, 4 days, you feel so much more in control
Yeah.
of those decisions. But, good for you. That makes me wanna, not get after the jelly beans this in the next few weeks. Okay, so please share with us when you came up with this program. Share how it developed, how what you want to share with how it works. What did that process look like when you were being your own detective and putting that
Yeah.
together?
Yeah. So, I always say like my brain is like Tetris. And if your listeners remember the game or you remember the game, like remember the game of Tetris, like my brain is always just kind of like zip, 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 like kind of going down and grabbing all the things that it can. And I'm looking at things like, okay, we've got 70 to 90 billion dollars is the weight loss industry in the United States. Diets have a 92% failure rate, and two-thirds of women aged 40 to 60 are clinically overweight. So obviously, the way that things have been done hasn't been working.
Mhm.
And I feel like the industry itself, it really relies on just women failing. And, because they can be repeat customers. I was like, that's not okay.
That's
That is
depressing.
not okay. So, what are the 8% of those women who are succeeding? What are they doing differently?
Mhm.
And the other piece of that is, kind of back to that question I asked in the beginning, is we have these skills that make us badass, they make us rock in all of these other areas. So why aren't they working? And really, it's from that perspective of, a lot of people like to point the finger at trauma. And trauma is a huge piece of it. And I want to give the space for and give trauma its fair due. But the neurons in our brain that fire together wire together. And it's so much more complicated and so much more nuanced. So we have these patterns. So things like, for my own example, I was, bullied in elementary school, middle school, even high school. So, for me, it was like, and I was bullied for being a little bit larger and being a little bit slower than the rest of the kids. So for me, I achieved a lot of value from being the smart kid in class, for getting the straight A's, for being the smartest kid, for reading the bigger books. So that's where my value came from. So even things like, I get straight A's on a report card and then, go out for ice cream to celebrate, things like that. So we've got all of these different patterns that
Mhm.
just are layered and layered and layered like a big emotional lasagna, and all of these layers, and they build up these neurons in our brain. And that is the only path that our brain knows. It's the familiar path, and our brain wants
Mhm.
what's familiar. So then we kind of look at it from the perspective of, oh, we've got a diet. And when you think about the diet, okay, when we learn to do a thing, so whether that's driving a car, whether that's playing a sport, whether, learning a musical instrument, I mean, even at our age, like learning smartphones for the first time, right? It has a very distinct and somewhat linear trajectory from point A to point B. You
Okay.
practice, you practice, you practice, you practice, and you get better at the thing, you know?
Mhm.
But when we look at traditional quote unquote diet culture, it doesn't work that way. There's no practice and practice and practice and practice to get better. And so we're applying this logic on top of these patterns. And we're like, okay, no wonder it doesn't work.
Mm.
No wonder it fails 92% of the time. So when we look at it from that perspective and thinking about, okay, what are the 8% of women doing that are successful? And I like to think of this. So I'll share a story. So I still live in the middle of nowhere, Pennsylvania. So growing up, we did not have to learn how to parallel park because we just didn't have to. Like it was not a skill I grew up with. Well, I lived in the DC metro area for 20 years. And despite living in the DC metro area for 20 years and driving and parking my car, I was just so stubborn. I was like, I'm not going to learn how to parallel park. I hate it. I can't do it. I'm not going to learn. So I'm just going to drive 10 blocks and park and
I am the
walk,
same. I am the same.
right? Like I'm that person. So fast forward 2021, I bought a brand new Hyundai Kona. And Heather, you want to know what that brand new Hyundai Kona had in it? It's
It could
got a
do it itself.
it can't do it itself, but it's got a
Oh,
backup camera. It's got a backup
okay.
camera.
Okay.
So I tried parallel parking with a backup camera. And all of a sudden, I could do it. I wasn't great at it, but I could do it.
Mhm.
And I was like, okay, I didn't change. I didn't learn any new skills. Remember that linear path from point A to point B? I didn't learn a new skill. I just got a new tool. I got a backup camera that helps me to see a little bit bigger, a little bit wider. And now all of a sudden, I can do what I've always been able to do. I just didn't know how to do it.
Mhm.
Does that make sense?
It's a great analogy. Yep. I just wanna share, I cannot, even with a backup camera. I haven't mastered that concept yet. I will continue working on it. My
Okay.
husband can he can parallel park a fire truck. I
Oh
can't.
my goodness.
I, I'm going to get over it. Thank you for the encouragement.
Yeah.
And I do want to say that just the neurons in the brain that fire together, wire together, that is gold.
Thank
And
you.
so let's talk more about how we get these neurons to fire and rewire.
Yeah. So there's a 3-step process that I use. And before I get into the 3-step process, I just want to just touch for about a minute or so on
Yeah.
what hasn't been working, because we hear so often, and I like to bucket them together: the everything in moderation, the mindful eating slash intuitive eating, and then willpower. And I will caveat this, that they do work, but they work when you're on the other side. If
Mm.
you're experiencing that obsessive food noise is always going to win. Okay, so they do work, but they only work when you're on the other side. And when we keep trying to do that and you're still on that side where, with the food noise, that's why it's not working. There's been a lot of research out of MIT. And what they found is that the moment that craving hits, your brain decides in half of a second that it wants the food. Half of a second. So you don't have a fighting chance over this. But on top of that, you've got dopamine coming in. And we think of
Mhm.
dopamine like the reward chemical, it's like what you feel good around babies and puppies. But dopamine is actually the anticipation chemical,
Mm, mhm.
meaning your brain is going to get that dopamine hit, that feel good hit, in anticipation of eating the food before it even touches your lips. So things like, coming home after a bad day, your spouse brought home cupcakes when you told them not to, and you eat the cupcakes, like, it is automatic. And it's because your brain has decided in half of a second, and then the dopamine kicks in. So that's why the willpower and the intuitive eating and the everything in moderation doesn't work, because you've got these forces coming in that you have no control over,
Mhm.
right? So when we go into this 3-step process, and you think about it from that perspective, what we are doing is we are building a new path in the woods. So that path that I was talking about that your brain has, that is this old worn path that has been created over decades. That the layers of lasagna, it is well worn, it is our familiar path. So what we need to do, we need to get out our work boots, we need to get out our gloves, and we need to go create a new path in the woods. But what's there right now? It's bushes and thorns and snakes and spiders, right? So it's going to be some work to clear the new path. It's not like, oh, I'm just going to start walking. No, we actually have to clear the path. We actually
Mhm.
have to create, that new path, and clear out those decades and the layers of the beliefs and habits and traumas and the experience that are embedded literally at a cellular level in our body,
Mhm.
right? So that is step one, is called see it. And this is where we're going to use FBI inspired pattern analysis to actually uncover those hidden patterns, to uncover the triggers, to actually see what's going on behind the scenes and behind that emotional eating. So you can actually start to understand, okay, why is this happening?
Mhm.
Not from a woe is me why, but from a just a logical, analytical, neutral perspective. Why is this happening? When you have that data, you can do something with it.
Okay.
When I was speaking at MIT last year, my flight was delayed. And just the psychology major in me just went crazy at the airport. And I'm watching everyone, they're how they are responding to the stress of their flight being delayed. And they're going to Dunkin' Donuts and they're grabbing the donuts and they're grabbing the bagels. They're going to the bar at 8 o'clock in the morning and drinking. Okay. So that is see it. Now I'm watching them, but the see it process is how you watch yourself
Mhm.
during this. Okay, so step one is see it. Step two is stop it. This is where we actually learn FBI inspired tactics to interrupt the cycle in real time, to actually stop those cravings before they take over. So, that fork, that in the when you're looking at those two paths in the woods and you're coming up to that fork, and your brain's like, I want to go down the familiar path, that half of a second, that dopamine hit, your brain's like, I'm going to go down the new path. This is where we actually use what's called countermeasures. And we use the countermeasures in counterintelligence. They are just strategic actions to prevent the threat before it happens.
Okay.
So that's where we're going to put those countermeasures in the context of emotional eating. just these tactical interventions to intercept those cravings at that moment in time, right at that half of a second, right at that dopamine hit, to say, we are now going to go down that new path. And that new path isn't shiny and new yet. We're still building it, but we're at a stop it. We're like, okay, we're going to stop. We're going to take a pause. Okay, I can go down the old path, the path that I know that's familiar, or I could go down the new path, which I'm still going to have to do some work on. Right.
Mhm.
So it's a lot more of a conscious decision.
Okay.
And when we think about it from that dopamine perspective, we are literally potty training our brain. So when you think about potty training, a puppy and how many times you have to take the puppy outside so it doesn't pee on the carpet, and you're taking the puppy out and you're giving them the treat, good boy, every time he goes potty, good boy, go potty, go potty, good boy. That is literally what we are doing with our brain. We are potty training our brain, giving it a little reward every time it goes potty outside. That is exactly what we are doing. It is that simple. So step one is see it. Step two is stop it. Step three is shift it. So this is where we actually rewire those automatic responses to create a healthier, more effortless relationship with food. This
Mm.
is where we are making that new path and we are making it shiny. We are making it sparkly. Okay. Back to the cupcakes on the counter. So, and I'm using this as a cringe personal example. But when my ex would bring home something like, I told you not to bring this into the house, and I would eat it, right? I would eat it first. And I was like, get in here, and scream at him, like, I told you not to bring in this house. Like, what are you doing to me? And just get all mad. And that was the old response. But when you think about it from this perspective, okay, the new response looks like you can have those cupcakes on the counter and they aren't drawing you in like a giant magnet. They're just like, oh, there's cupcakes on the counter. It's no big deal.
Mm.
And if you want to eat one, you eat one, or you have a few bites, depending on how big it is, the mini ones or the big ones, and you can stop without any kind of mental gymnastics or willpower. You're like, oh, I had a bite. I understand that whole foods are going to nourish my body better. I had a treat and I'm good to go. And that's it. Or you can look at them and say, you know what? I'm good. I've got food that's going to be healthier for me to eat, and have those logical decisions. There was a study, not sure if you're familiar with the karaoke study by Allison Wood Brooks. It is so cool.
No, tell us.
Oh my goodness, karaoke. So one of my favorite songs, Don't Stop Believing. Okay. I mean, she picked the ultimate 80s anthem. Okay. And so this was at a Harvard Business School. And she had three groups of people to sing karaoke. The first group was just the normal group, the control group. The second group would say to themselves over and over again before they sang, I'm nervous, I'm nervous, I'm nervous, I'm nervous.
Mhm.
And then the third group, the opposite of nervous, is I'm excited. It's the exact
Uh-huh.
same chemical response. So they would say, I'm excited, I'm excited, I'm excited before they went in. And so the control group had a 69% accuracy. The I'm nervous group had a 53% accuracy. And the I'm excited group had an 80% accuracy. And what this proves is something that simple can rewire your prefrontal cortex, which is where all of this, the impulse control and the decision making and the self-regulation happens.
Mhm.
And really to just, kind of put the red ribbon on this. So my stepson's 22 now. I've raised him since he was 5. And when he was a little guy, getting him to brush his teeth was just an epic nightmare. Morning and night. It was just, you know, and he would try to trick me. I was like, did you brush your teeth? He's like, yeah, stepmom, I brushed my teeth. I'm like,
They lie.
yeah. And he's like, here, my toothbrush is wet.
They go
Like
through
the
those
trick,
measures.
yeah, the trickery. I was like, okay, let me smell your breath. I'm like, oh God, just you're disgusting. Go brush your teeth. Okay, but fast forward, at some point, our kids become adults, right? Do we as adults have post-it notes on our bathroom mirror telling us, affirmations about brushing our teeth and how wonderful we are? Do we listen to podcast episodes about brushing your teeth or download books about brushing our teeth? Like, no, we just brush our teeth. But it's not even that it's such an automatic habit. If you think about it from this perspective, if you're running late, if you're having one of those mornings, you're running late, You can't find your keys, you can't find your glasses, you can't find your phone. You get in an argument with your spouse, the dog pooped on the carpet, like one of those mornings,
Hmm.
and you're trying to leave the house. You are still going to leave the house having brushed your teeth and with that coffee in your hand.
Most
Like that
definitely.
is a non negotiable. It's not
Hmm.
just that it's an automatic habit, it is a non negotiable. And that is what we are training our brain to do.
That's amazing. The karaoke study, I'm not familiar with that,
It's so cool.
but I am familiar with the way that you speak to yourself. So I just presented a few weeks ago about how we speak to ourselves and how we
Mm,
shift that to change the neural pathways. And I
yeah.
had to tell myself the whole way before, going up those stairs to the back of the theater and you're on mic, so you have to be really quiet. But I told myself, I'm excited. I'm excited. And I, instead of like, ooh, because you are feeling those jitters,
Yeah,
but it changes the brain
it
when
does.
when you speak to yourself that way.
It really does. And, and to be honest with you, we know we kind of touched on this. Is it gone forever? It depends. How, I don't want to say how bad is it, but how big is it for you?
Mm,
I mean, mine was pretty big and I still get cravings. It's not like they've completely gone away, but I don't give in to them. I
okay.
know what to do that works for me when they
Hmm.
happen. And they don't happen often, but they do happen. So, I mean, it's not
Hmm.
like they're going to be gone forever. It's just, okay, we have a new way to deal with it. And we have a way that's a lot more automatic. We have a way that we put a lot more thought. It's a lot more strategic. It's playing. I like to tell my clients, we play chess. We don't play checkers. We look at this from a long-term strategic perspective.
Very smart. Can we, Holly, I know you gave us the cupcake analogy. Can we practice with something
Yes.
with the see it and stop it and shift it? Let's say this is not just in your house. This is you're at the store
Hmm.
and you're in the checkout line and they've got all the crap right there in front of your face to see. But it's a seasonal something that only comes up, once a year and you love that seasonal thing. And your brain's like, "Yeah, but it's once a year. It's not going to be that bad if I take this bag home." But you are already thinking that bag's going to get to the car and you're going to open it in the car and you're going to have some before you even get home. And then you realize three stoplights later, oh, I'm actually, so like we can see what's going to happen, right? Let's walk through. You're standing in the store line, you're having this conversation with yourself. What does see it look like?
Yeah. So this is from a perspective of, and the whole process is longer than just like in an
The,
instant. Like
the
it's a
checkout.
whole process.
Yeah.
But from kind of a global perspective, the way that someone can do this in that position is, and you think about it like, okay, this is a scarcity. This is my brain on scarcity,
Mm.
thinking this is the only time I'm going to get this. I have to wait an entire year before I'm going to get this again. So, recognizing that, this is my brain on scarcity. And then asking yourself, what am I feeling in this moment? Am I actually craving the thing? Is my brain craving scarcity or is it something else? Now, here's what trips people up. And this is why this is a process is that when you think about sitting with our feelings, okay, you talk about the checkout line, you think about it from this perspective. How many of you listening, when you're in a checkout line and you're more than like the next person, the second you just get out your phone and start scrolling,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? Because we are so programmed that we can't even stand there in our own
Thoughts, right?
thoughts
Yeah.
for more than a minute,
Right.
or even sitting down at the end of the night watching Netflix.
Hmm.
And the second you turn the TV on, you're on your phone, you're on your tablet, you're on your laptop, right? So we are now programmed that we can't even do that. So when you think about it from that perspective, we are training our brain to be okay with sitting with uncomfortable emotions.
Hmm.
So it is a process that I do take my clients through. It's a very cathartic process because they are learning to regulate their nervous system, to sit with those emotions. Because like, well, if I don't have the food to comfort me, then what is going to comfort me?
Yeah.
And learning what that looks like. So, so it is a bigger conversation, but in that moment, in that checkout line, you can kind of think back to this conversation and say, okay, what am I actually craving?
Mm-hmm.
Am I experiencing an emotion right now? What is that need that my body wants? Is it the scarcity? Is it the feeling of being left out of something? Is it something that happened earlier in the day that my needs weren't being met? I'm not feeling valued. I'm not feeling worthy. You know, what is it that I'm craving?
Mm-hmm.
And I always like to tell my clients the win is in the awareness. The win is not whether or not you ate the thing after the stop. The win is, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you ate the thing. It doesn't matter if you didn't eat the thing. It doesn't matter if you started to eat the thing and then stopped to eat the thing.
Yeah.
The win is in that awareness. The win is being able to stop, take a pause, and say, what is going on? And when you can start collecting those wins, that's when the process really starts to work.
Wonderful.
Because you're going to start to ingrain again the neurons in our brain that fire together, wire together.
Mm-hmm.
So
That's
hopefully that made sense.
that's really helpful.
Yeah.
I appreciate that, and I know everybody listening does too.
Yeah.
This has been incredibly helpful and just fun. I've loved talking with you. Would you please share with our audience the best places to find you?
Yes, absolutely. So I actually have a gift for your audience, for everyone who's listening. So I'd love to share that.
Please do.
And yeah, and the gift is for you. And first of all, thank you again for having me on the show here. So the gift is for you if you are a high achieving woman in midlife and you are not in control around food. If this message that I shared today resonated with you, you're stress eating, you're mindlessly snacking, you're hijacked by those cravings and the food noise. And it's a bundle. It's called the Emotional Eating Tactical Blueprint. And it's got two things. And the first gift is a free gift that I give out abundantly. It's a quiz, but it's actually designed like a personality, like a psychological profile.
Ooh,
And it is really good. Everyone that takes
love
this,
it.
it is scary accurate, like scary accurate. That's what they say. They all come back with the same thing. And you're going to be able to uncover your number one emotional and stress eating trigger to actually understand what's driving those triggers rather than feeling like a victim to them.
Mm,
And then the second gift in the bundle, and again, it's totally free, it's my gift, but this is only behind the paywall. So this is only for my paid clients, but I'm going to give it to your listeners for free.
that's
And it's
amazing, Holly.
called, it's called the Crime Scene Files Emotional Eating Edition. So this is when we actually start using those tactical tools to intercept the triggers and the behaviors when they happen.
Okay.
And the coolest thing about this, it is designed true crime style. So if you love the true crime podcast and the CSI shows and the Law and Order shows, you are going to get just totally geeked out by this gift. And there's no diet anywhere. It's just a fun way to really start looking at emotional eating. So anyway, so if you want the emotional eating tactical blueprint, again, totally free, it's my gift. Go to Instagram at holly.bertone, and it's Bertone, and
Mm-hmm.
DM me the word blueprint, and I will send it over. Again, Instagram at holly.bertone, Bertone. I had to take a second. And then DM the word blueprint and I will send it over.
Perfect. I'm going to make sure that's in the show notes as well.
Awesome. Thank you.
So, Holly, I would love to know, because we ask this of all of our guests, what makes you feel like a badass?
Oh my goodness. I feel like I was just meant to be in this place,
Mm,
between being bullied as a kid and breast cancer and autoimmune disease and divorce and my mother passing, like these five big events, and having the fortitude and having the tenacity to overcome them, to realize that emotional eating was that through line from between all of them.
mm,
And being in that place where I can stand up and say, there is no shame in this, to talk about it from that perspective and to help other women find their own comeback, to find their own fortitude, their own tenacity to get to the other side of this too.
mm. What a gift. Thank you so much for your time and your wisdom and your insight. And you're just a joy to talk with.
Oh, thank you so much, Heather.
Thank you for listening, everybody. Continue to keep hitting that reset. Make sure to check Holly out. Go take that quiz and stay badass. We'll see you next time on the Badass Reset Club.